including one popular chart analyst who says that XRP has hit oversold territory for the first time in over a year. And it also shows a chart indicating that if history rhymes with itself, we'll be looking at nearly $18 XRP by the end of this market cycle. Now, even so, I know a lot of people are thinking, what's wrong with XRP? Is something different this time? Set aside the fact that obviously last market cycle, XRP didn't hit a new all-time high because of the SEC attack. We all know that. But it still did structurally and time-wise behave the same in 2021, last market cycle, as it did in 2017, when it had its most parabolic price activity ever to that point. And, in the past, we've always seen our first major burst with XRP, the price burst, and then about 6 months later, a second and final price burst. And then, of course, the market cycle would conclude. That's become historically normal. Right now, this market cycle, although it's true, we've seen multiple new all-time highs, we haven't seen a true final parabolic rally to cap this market cycle off. And it's taking far longer than ever before to get there. Like there's no denying it at this point. Either something's broken or this is just dragging on. So is something broken? Is something wrong with XRP? Well, we're going to talk about that. But I will tell you at the outset of the video, the short answer, as far as I'm concerned, is no. But it's $2.34. Bitcoin just a hair above $107,000. So another day of sideways price action primarily. Before really kicking things off, I just thought I'd share this. This is a page. It's a photograph for those who are not looking. I'll just note it's a photograph of a page from Anthony Pompliano's book. And I haven't read his book, but I like this. I like he devoted a whole page to print this in large text. It reads as follows. And this is my investment strategy. Like on the whole, this is it. Like there's no secret. I have nothing to sell you. There's no course to buy from you. I have literally nothing to sell you. I don't even have sponsors, even though I could. And I reserve the right to do that in the future. I could change my mind. I just haven't to this point. But here's what he wrote in his book. The best investors in the world are really good at doing nothing for long periods of time. Well, folks, that's me. Because after I buy stuff, I literally do nothing. I have been holding XRP since 2017, and it's worth a boatload more than what I paid for it because I've been stubborn. I've been patient. I've waited, and the market has popped. Now, it hasn't finished. I still don't think it's finished. I think it's going to be worth way more than it is right now. But just to reaffirm the concept here, patience is required. It's not a suggestion when it comes to achieving life-changing wealth in crypto. And nothing is broken here. We do not get to choose when markets pop, but we do get to choose whether or not we have exposure to the markets when they start rampaging to the upside. So control the parts that you can control and do not worry about the rest. So that means, even if we're going into a bear market, which I do not believe for the record, even if we are and the bears are correct here, then I'll be like, okay, well, too bad I got that one wrong. And I'm just going to keep doing nothing because the market's going to come back. And then when it comes back, probably in several years, then I'm going to sell for even more than I plan to sell for because the market will go even higher. So either way, I win. And if you have that attitude and you do have that conviction and then the proper time horizon, this isn't actually that hard. And frankly, if you're counting on the life-changing wealth to finally become happy in life, stop looking at the world like that. That's just a friendly suggestion. I've been around long enough. I'm not ancient, but I'm 42 years old now. I have enough life experience and wisdom to understand that if you're waiting for the money to fix your life, you're doing it wrong. You need to be content with your money, with your life rather, before you get the money, because getting the money ain't going to fix it. Okay. Get your life right. If that's actually what you're waiting for, that is a bad way of approaching life. And then you're not living in the moment. You're like, what are you doing? You're living like a zombie day after day, just dreaming of this thing and hoping it's going to come. And it can come. Don't get me wrong. Of course it can come. This is not some sort of fairy tale. Like you really can get ridiculously wealthy in crypto. But I'm just saying in the meantime, if you're not appreciating every single day and finding a reason to be optimistic and content with life, you're doing it wrong. Find a way to fix that first. Because if you're counting on this dream scenario, which I admit could come, of course, I'm definitely an optimist there. But if you're counting on that to fix your problems, I'm telling you, spoiler alert, it ain't going to do it. It definitely is not going to do it. And so you can waste a number of years if that's your mindset and you're counting that. You could waste the next several years. Like, what if we are going into a bear market? You can waste the next several years waiting for that. Why don't you find a way to fix your state of mind so you can enjoy the next several years, be in a proper mental position, and then on top of that, enjoy your wealth when you do get it, which absolutely is possible. This is not a pipe dream. You can get ridiculously wealthy in crypto. Like my life, I'm not going to say numbers because I'm just not comfortable doing that, but my net worth is way higher than it would otherwise be had I not jumped into crypto. I've been here 8 years. And all I've done is nothing after I bought stuff. I'm stubborn. I buy stuff and then I will. That really is it. Again, that's why I have no course to sell you. It's just simple stuff here. People just seem to have trouble doing that. But it actually works. And so I'm just going to keep doing it. So yeah, the best investors are really good at doing nothing for long periods of time. Just wanted to spread the message and reaffirm that because it just is true. And it doesn't make sense to be fearful in the meantime, just because the market's volatile. The market's been volatile for over 16 years. We have 16 years worth of data to tell you it's doing what you should expect it to do. And you're going to have scared emotions because it's doing what it's been doing for 16 years. That doesn't even make logical sense. I know humans feel that way, but that's why I'm just trying to show you, like, it's not necessary. You don't have to live like that. You don't have to be fearful every freaking day. Here's a post from Chart Analyst Zoom. He says, how are you not bullish on XRP? And he posted that this morning. And obviously what he's comparing here is what's been unfolding this market cycle to what happened in 2017. Up to that point, the greatest, most fantastic moves from XRP in history. And clearly he's indicating here, this ain't done. That he believed the same type of thing is playing out. But as I noted at the outset of the video, historically, XRP pops in price, its first major move up, and then it moves sideways for about half a year, and then it continues to the upside. So structurally, I mean, that set aside the time. Structurally, it's doing the same thing. It's moved up. We've been consolidating. We're just sideways here, and we've hit a few all-time highs. Been fantastic to see. Same thing happened in 2017. Okay, got up. It went from half a penny to 42 cents for the first time ever. Went back down to sub 20 cents. I can't remember how low it got. Maybe it was like, I can't remember. It was 13, 14, 15 cents. I don't remember. I'd have to look on the chart. But anyway, it went way back down, consolidated mostly around 20 cents for about half a year, then rocketed to $3.35 to cap the cycle. Well, we haven't had that next move up. And that's why it's so exciting that we've already seen $3.65 this market cycle without the final move. And I do believe it's coming. And I acknowledge, honestly, I would be concerned about this if the rest of the market were moving in a cyclically, time-wise normal way. If it were only XRP that weren't, I admit I would be concerned that something might be broken here. That is not the case, though, folks. That is not the case. And I'm going to circle back to that point in just a second here. Chart Nerd certainly agrees. He says history will repeat, and he shared a post comparing 2025 to what happened in 2017. So pretty much every analyst that I follow, not literally all of them, but so many of them, point this out on a somewhat regular basis. Like, in many ways, what's happening right now is similar to what has happened in 2017. And the great Matsby is kind of pointing this out as well and addressing the concern that I'm noting here. So here's the XRP price chart going back to the later part of 2013, actually. So this is all XRP price action in history. And the great Matsby wrote, XRP is repeating what it did back in 2017. Consolidate sideways for months until it touched the 20-month moving average. And that's, of course, the yellow line. So you can see where we are right now. He's noting that it touched it. And here back in 2017, where it touched it, and you can see what happened next. And so he wrote, after that, it shot up to finish off the cycle. It looks to be setting up that way again, since XRP finally touched the 20-month moving average. It's just taking a little longer this cycle because everything is taking longer this cycle. That's why it makes sense to have peace of mind about this. Again, if it were just XRP that we're lagging, it'd be like, well, this really is notably different. Why isn't it popping right now? The whole market's going off. Why isn't XRP going? But that's not where we find ourselves. We find ourselves in a situation where we haven't had that final parabolic blow off top for Bitcoin. We haven't had an alt season. We haven't had that sentiment in crypto from crypto market participants that you'll see on social media where everything's euphoric. And if you ever even hint that it's going to end, people are just going to scream at you and tell you're an idiot and foolish and you don't know what you're talking about. Although, of course, it does end. The markets find tops too, just like they find bottoms. But we haven't had any of that. Since we haven't had any of that, I am not concerned. So the bigger question is, why? What's going on? Which brings us to this. If you want the explanation, I think this is the best explanation that I've seen posited from any of the chart analysts that I follow. And so here's this post from chart analyst Tech Dev, shared this with his 551,000 followers on X. And he simply wrote, longest runway yet. And he's got a Bitcoin chart up above going back to 2013. And he's got the business cycle signal on the bottom. That's a key metric to track. That's what's on the bottom of the chart right here. And you can see how Bitcoin cycle peaks correlate with business cycle peaks. Every single cycle going back over a decade. That is what this is showing. And Tech Dev, along with Raoul Pal and Julian Biddle, those are the three who keep bringing this point up over and over and over again. Those are the three analysts that I follow who are very consistently hammering this point home. And they hold a minority opinion, which is, and they've held it for a long time, going back. I don't know if they started talking about it late last year or maybe it was early part this year. I can't remember now. But for a very long time, they've been beating this drum of, hey, just so you know, guys, the business cycle, it's extending compared to previous cycles. And as a result, you're not going to see the crypto market peak until 2026, perhaps as late as the second quarter of 2026. And so it's a minority opinion, yes, but it's coming from some of the most informed and for good reason, well-respected analysts that I follow. There's a reason, for instance, that Raoul Pal has over 1.2 million followers on X. He's one of the most famous figures in all of crypto. And he's one of the guys that is insisting this idea makes sense. He's not promising for sure that it's right, but he strongly believes that, yes, this is indeed the case. And he said just as much. So if that's the case, that will explain why we haven't had XRP pop yet either. And you just look at it with your eyeballs. If you have one functioning human eyeball, you can see what I'm talking about here. Look at how this is dragged out time-wise compared to last cycle and the cycle before that. It's the business cycle. So when you see the business cycle metric on a chart like the one right here, just to be clear, it's basically tracking where the broader economy is in its rhythm of expansion and contraction. That's what this metric is. So when it's strong and growing, liquidity flows and risk assets like crypto tend to thrive. When it weakens, we're at the bottom of this, by the way, of course, when it weakens, growth slows. Money tightens and risk assets usually struggle. Those are some of the things that can come along. So when analysts like Tech Dev here overlay the business cycle on crypto charts, they're showing how Bitcoin and the rest of the market move in sync with those big waves of liquidity that drive everything from stocks to real estate to digital assets, you name it. And what's in the business cycle metric? Well, it's a composite of data. It includes a number of things, and this is not like a comprehensive list, but it includes industrial production and manufacturing, employment, consumer sentiment, money supply growth, so global M2, housing activity. And so it's not that there's one of those individual things drives the whole thing, which is why this isn't going to perfectly correlate necessarily with even global M2, which I think is a fantastic indicator of, directionally where we're going to go, because we have over a decade of data indicating, over close to 90% of the time directionally, Bitcoin and thus the crypto asset class is going to follow what global M2 is doing. This paints a pretty good picture. This is so I don't know for sure if this is right. I'm not pretending to know for sure if this is right, but I will tell you, having gathered perspective from tons of analysts in the crypto space, this is the best explanation that I found. Any other explanation I've read, I'm just like, I kind of roll my eyes. I'm like, it doesn't really make sense. This one makes sense. So if we really are extending, and the more time passes, by the way, I'm seeing more analysts be like, yep, this is extending. We're dragging further and further out. This is the best explanation that I've seen. So if indeed this thing is going to flip and then get hot and run to the upside here, it could take a little bit of time, but we're still very close. That would mean that in 2026, we still are going to see the peak and XRP is still going to rampage. And if you're wondering why this might be happening, and I've talked about this more extensively in other videos, so I won't extensively talk about it here, but it is the case that as far as, what causes these 4-year cycles, it's debt refinancing, which is, it's typically between 3 to 5 years when entities refinance. So it averages out to about 4. That's the reason we've seen this ever since the great financial crisis, because that's what cyclically kicked this off. But more recently, as Raoul Pal has pointed out, it's actually been debt refinancing on average 5 years instead of 4. So the fact that we're seeing this, that's what's prompting the business cycle, he thinks, to extend further out. That's what's been articulated. That's the idea that's been posited. I find it compelling. I don't know for sure. Again, don't know for sure if it's right. I definitely find it compelling, and it's the best explanation I've found. And it also explains why, yeah, Bitcoin has gotten where it's gotten, all-time high of close to $126,000. Some coins have popped, including XRP a bit, but we haven't seen a full-blown alt cycle. Well, all of this then makes sense if you take it all in. Yeah, I mean, so the more time passes, the more I tend to think that they really could be right about this. It was a harder sell a few months ago, but now that we're getting closer to the end of 2025 and we still haven't seen that euphoria, but you still do see that, global M2 is basically hanging out near all-time highs, and then the business cycle has to catch. Like, the more you look at stuff like that, it's like, maybe there is something to what they're saying here. So we'll see. Either way, I still believe it's coming. And here's a post from Crypto Insight UK, XRP USD chart on the screen here. He says, XRP hit the oversold area on the daily relative strength index during this recent flush for the first time since 38 cents. I have overlaid the exact same fractal on a logarithmic scale, no resizes. This is what a measured move would look like. Okay, now this is fascinating. So the white line, of course, that's the fractal that he plopped down. But look at the RSI down here. This is what he's talking about. First time we've hit oversold territory, and that would be anytime you're at 30 or below, that's considered oversold territory. This is a scale of 0 to 100. If you're at 70 or above, that would be overbought territory. And so this is the first time we've been in oversold territory since July of last year. Last year, folks, when XRP was about, what do you say here, 38 cents? Well, that's kind of fascinating. So he plopped down the fractal, and as you can see, I mean, you're heading a little shy of $18 if it played out in that particular manner again. And history does tend to rhyme with itself. So I'm just sitting here thinking, like, even if this does go into 2026, if Tech Dev's right and Julian Biddle and Raoul Paul, if they're all right and this goes into 2026, it's still happening. It'd just be bizarre if we enter a bear market and humans don't act like humans anymore, and we don't see them take profit and rotate in other coins. Like the humans are just done being greedy, like their DNA changed and they're no longer interested in maximizing their greed and profits. Like that's just done. I don't buy it. That already doesn't make sense right there. But then you look at the fact that, of the 30 top indicating metrics as tracked by CoinMarketCap, 0 out of 30 of those metrics for the cycle top indicators, 0 out of 30 have flipped. 0 out of 30. So what, those just none of them work anymore? None of them. They worked every other market cycle up until this point. Damn it. What, they just don't anymore? I don't find that to be compelling. I really don't. This is why I keep saying, like, you can't just look at chart analysis to come to a reasonable conclusion about what is probable. You need to take a look at historical perspective. You need to look at the macro environment, other factors, including the business cycle, global liquidity, all sorts of other stuff to come to a proper conclusion about what is probable. Chart analysis absolutely should be and is a part of that, but you can't look at just one thing. You got to look at a whole bunch of stuff. This is why I follow so many analysts, and a ton of them are chart analysts. A lot of them are macro analysts. Some of them are only TradFi analysts. I follow tons of different people. And if you just listen to smart people that have good track records, you'll have a reasonable idea about what is probable. And that's what I spend a boatload of time doing. That's, for a regular person like me who doesn't have a finance background, that's the smartest freaking thing you can do. Go to the people who are smart, who are informed, and make sure they got good track records. And if you follow for a span of years, which I have at this point, many of them anyway, most of them, yeah, you can kind of feel that out. And that's why I love making these videos. Like, I'm sharing what I perceive to be highly valuable information. I spend a ton of time putting this stuff together and tracking these guys literally on a daily basis. And it's fun. Like, it's a labor of love. I really enjoy doing this. But there is something to this. And so for regular people like me, and I know that's the vast majority of you listening, you're just like regular people like me, not in like the world of finance. It's not where we came from. You can still win, and you can figure out this stuff. You gotta be careful who you listen to, though. I definitely know that. Here's a post from Steph's Crypto. He's bringing home the same point here. XRP is extremely oversold, he says. He says millionaires will be made in the next 1 to 2 months. Okay, well, I don't know what the timeline's going to be. I mean, that's not crazy, but if it goes into 2026, also not crazy. But yes, absolutely oversold, and I still believe the best is yet ahead. So on the same day, Steph's Crypto happened to notice the same thing. RSI down here, oversold for the first time in over a year. But, you can only stay in that territory for so long. Eventually it flips. And the same with being overbought. Like once you hit overbought territory, it can persist for a while, and then you can have tremendous strength through that and ultimately hit crazy new all-time highs. But markets find tops and bottoms regardless of what metric you're looking at. So this is a good sign. Here's a post from chart analyst Casey Trades. For the sake of time, I won't read this whole thing because it's kind of long, but she was warning that's possible we could go lower, but even if that's the case, that does not change her perspective that we're ultimately going to be seeing XRP rampage somewhere between $6.50 to $10 on the next leg up. That is still in the cards here. Here's a post from a chart analyst Crypto Patel. It says XRP on the edge of something big. XRP just broke out of a multi-year downtrend and is retesting major support at $2 to $1.70. Holding this zone keeps the bullish structure intact. A break above $3.30 could ignite a run towards $5 and even $10. So there's another analyst that also thinks double-digit price action is in the cards. It is in the cards, and what has happened to this point does not break higher time frame structure. Here's a post from chart analyst Javon Marks. XRP currently holding a hidden bullish divergence, and this indicating movement back towards the $3.40 levels. At that point, prices will be above a key level, which brings $4.80 into play, and we could see a continuation towards the meeting of it. $4.80 is over 100% away, so this divergence could spark a much larger move than many think. Okay, and so he's still optimistic. What just happened didn't break XRP. That's certainly not unique to XRP. The whole market got liquidated a little over a week ago. The best is yet ahead. And this is what I keep seeing. And these are analysts who accurately called XRP breaking out to the upside this market cycle. They've had great track records with XRP, and none of them have flipped bearish. Here's a post from chart analyst Crypto Seth. Can you feel XRP doing this soon? Look at how precisely that wick retested the midlines. And he's talking about this key level right here with this yellow line, but he's talking about the short term. You can see where he's targeting $5.70 in the short term here. So nobody's flipped here. I mean, the closest out of all the analysts I follow, the closest I get to somebody having flipped would be the blockchain backer. And he's made it clear that he does think it's more probable than not that we've entered a bear market. He's the only one that I follow that has said that. And he could be right. Like, I mean, I'm not convinced of that, but he's held minority positions in the past that were right. And so nothing but respect for him, of course. And I'll give you an example here. It's the one that I typically cite. In 2021, he was predicting that the peak for Bitcoin at $70,000 roughly. And that was a minority opinion, and people made fun of him for it. And he was right. So it is a minority opinion here that we're entering a bear market. He's the only analyst I follow. Whether we're talking about, the TradFi guys that are talking about legacy finance, whether we're talking about chart analysts or macro guys, out of all of the analysts that I follow, the blockchain backer, unless I missed something, he's the only analyst that I regularly follow at all, who thinks that, we're almost certainly in a bear market. And he has articulated that. So I'll just say if he's right, credit where it's due. Absolutely. But I hope he's wrong. I know he hopes he's wrong. But, we'd rather see things go higher. That would be better for him too, obviously. I haven't gotten to a point where I've seen enough data to be compelled, because again, once you take a look at not just, the charting perspective, but, historical context in traditional finance, which, crypto ultimately correlates heavily with. And once you factor in other macro complications, and even just what I said about the business cycle and global M2 specifically, to me, that's much more compelling. So you guys make your own decisions. You come to your own conclusions rather. I don't know for sure what's going to happen, but just like everybody else, I'm going to just take in the data, and it's going to strike me in a particular way. And I'm going to believe whatever I believe based on that data. And this is where I've landed at this point. And I'll shift if there's additional compelling data coming in from additional analysts, and it has to do not just with charts, but what's going on in macro. I'll flip if there's reason to flip. I just haven't seen it yet. You're going to have to give me a more compelling reason. Here's a post from chart analyst CW says the sell wall for XRP exists until $2.48. So above that, he thinks we'll have some thin air. Now, of course, there's always the opportunity for additional sell walls to form, but that's a key level to watch, at least it is an estimation, at least as of the time that I'm recording this. So look, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. Anybody who says otherwise is full of it. Either they have undeserved confidence, or they're lying, or something along those lines. But it's okay to have strong conviction. And right now I do have rather strong conviction. I just, for better or worse, whether I'm right or wrong, my conviction is that we're going to see this market, the crypto market, rampage higher, including XRP, before we finally hit a cycle peak, and then we're going to be done. And the good news is, going back to what I said earlier about, the best strategy being doing nothing. The best investors in the world are good at doing nothing for long periods of time. The good news is, if I'm wrong, which I acknowledge is possible, of course, I'm wrong sometimes. My suspicions, even on big things from time to time, are going to be wrong. Of course. That's true for anyone. But the reason it's not ultimately going to matter is because if that happens, I'm going to keep doing nothing with the stuff that I hold. And then, in fact, because I'm already thrilled with the state of my life. Things are overall pretty damn fantastic. And so I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, going through life. I'm going to bring in new money, and I'll just buy more stuff in the meantime before I finally sell and get that ridiculous life-changing wealth. Life is good. And I encourage you guys, if you're not there with yourselves, whether mentally or otherwise, find a way to get there without ridiculous wealth. You've got to be able to do that. I really think that's just a basic, wise suggestion there, and so I am there. That is where I am in life. And I don't need to pull all that money to be wildly wealthy, or to get that wild wealth and actually take that profit to finally feel like, oh, now I get to live my real life. That's a stupid way to live. That is a stupid way to live. Now I get to live my real life. No, this is your real life. Enjoy it. You get one, have fun with it. Find a way to be happy. Life is good. Okay. Yeah, there's tragedy and there's bad stuff, but there's also a lot of really good stuff, and find a way to just get in the right mindset. It really does make sense to fight to do that, especially for natural inclination is to the contrary, as is the case for some people. For some people, it's easier than others. But that's why I say in the meantime, even if I have to wait several more years, it's fine. I'll be fine. And then I'll sell whenever it makes sense to sell. And I can't control that anyway. Whether I'm right or wrong about going into a bull market, like a remainder of a bull market, or if it goes into a bear market, regardless of whether I'm right, I can't control it anyway. What's going to happen is going to happen. All I control is whether or not I have exposure, and I'm doing that. I'm making sure I have exposure. So I'll just buy even more and be even more rich the next time the market pops in. So either way, it's fine, and it is not worth stressing about. Live life, be content, be happy, do meaningful things, and everything's going to be fine. That's the truth. That message needs to get delivered in investing, especially in crypto, way more than it does. So I'm going to keep doing it because I firmly believe that's what makes sense. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea.